Good morning and welcome. The show today is on the future of transportation. I already had a question from one of our panelists on what that means. Well, what that means to me is obviously transportation is changing, both from a point of view of dealerships and from a point of view of internationally and even nationally, the way people purchase vehicles. So it's kind of apt for me to start with a company based out of Boston. This is a portion of an interview I did with Ryan Quinlan. I did it actually last week. I should have the interview up soon. The company is called FlexCar. So I just wanted to start with sort of a little bit of a clip of that, and then we'll get into it. Here we go. It takes a second to launch this for some reason, always. I don't know why that is. Try again. Come on.
What do you experience with the car? So when you're going to get a car, I want to be able to drive the car. I want to be able to use it for commuting. I want to drive to Maine or whatever with it. But I need the transportation, but I also want the newest features. I want to love that car that I'm in, feel happy when I'm driving it. And the traditional ownership for the last 100 years locks you into a car as the cars depreciate or losing the value that you put into it.
Yeah.
Then on top of it, you're having to pay for maintenance, you're having to pay for insurance,
we have to
assistance if anything goes wrong. We cover all of that.
Welcome.
So we allow you to get into whatever car you want.
How long
Stay
you
in
been
that
with
car
this
until you are ready for another
little
one. So
over
you
a year.
might want a
Nice,
Jeep in the
great
summer,
company.
and then in the winter you might want to switch to an F-150.
And Amberly,
That's fine for us.
crossed
We love
paths
that.
about
You come
probably
in for
10
6
times
months
at
into one
NADA.
car, switch into another one for 3
Right.
months. That's
I
totally
feel like
fine.
that's the truth.
Switch back
Yeah,
into
nice to
a
see you this morning.
sedan, a new Mercedes for the summer next time. If you want to try out an EV for 3 to 6 months or for a year, that's great with us too. And then if you decide, I really love this specific car, I'm going to stay in this for the next 2 years, that's great for us. So FlexCar is about meeting you where you want to own a car. So I want my experience to be flexible. I don't want to deal with the problems. I only want to have the car I want, and I don't want to be locked in for a long time. We'll meet the customers where they are. So it starts off with picking your right car. You pick a driving plan.
So that gives you a little bit of a tip on FlexCar and what they're all about. You can definitely look it up. I think it's flexcar.com. There will be a full interview up soon. It's kind of an interesting model. If you are looking for, I guess, a creative way to lease a car and change it whenever you want, I think that's the model. Similar to a model Porsche did, I think a couple of years ago, they were playing around with that model.
Life is about connection, having a support system to lean on, and roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
One of the really nice things about Larry, one of the reasons that we brought him to our dealership, is he's still very much aligned with our core values and with our brand, which is thoughtful and professional service. And because that alignment really worked out well, because he was so committed to the success of others, we really knew that he was the right person to spend time with our sales team, with our managers and each sales consultant. And we're just really thrilled to have a partnership with him. And so we thank him.
How do you adventure? Is it fast? Is it free? Is it clear? Is it rugged? Is it remote? For your next adventure, trust MotoClose for buying, selling, trading, and protecting all of your motorized assets. Powered by Disclose Dealership Management Dashboard, your all-in-one DMS, CRM, menu, lead gen, inventory, staff, client, and deal management solution. Disclose DMD, like a DMS, only better. Mention promo code AutoHub2025 to get special pricing, including waived setup costs, no contract, and your first month's free.
Car dealers often underestimate the power of social media. Are you wondering why my face is plastered in your newsfeed? Are you a GM, dealer principal, or a manager at a car dealership wondering why you see me all the time on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and all over social media? Well, that didn't happen by chance. I target car dealers that are in-market shoppers for social media services, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for you so that you target in-market shoppers for your brand of customers that purchase your vehicles. During my Viato days, helping car dealers appraise and price cars, everyone was asking me, what do I do on social media? What do I do with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? And this was back in 2016. So here we are 10 years later. I started a company, became an entrepreneur, and now I help car dealers. They either outsource their social media needs to us, or we have a training and education center where we can teach all of your employees how to do social media in-house. 90% of consumers actually follow a business on Instagram. The average adult sits on TikTok for 2 hours a day in the rabbit hole. To learn more information about it or to get a demo from one of my sales associates, click the link below. We would absolutely love to help you.
And good morning. So we're going to start this morning with, obviously we have a great panel of guests this morning, but I'd like to start with the first person to show up, and that was Jody. So Jody, maybe you can introduce yourself and give us your thoughts on the future of transportation.
Okay, I'm Jody McCall, and we're one of the sponsors. We're MotoClose, which is a new third-party buying and selling site for dealers and consumers coming to market, and a new, as it said, DMS CRM, full inventory, photos. Yes, so we're just coming to market. Brandy and I, the creator, we've been in the business both she's been over 20 years, I'm close to 20. And I mean, the evolve of this industry is just ever so changing. And I was trying to think of something to compare it to, Ian. And I think about cell phones, about how much they've evolved and how cars are becoming that. We've made the industry so complicated, and really it is transactional. And, electric's already taking over. We're going to see 2035, autonomous driving is definitely going to be huge. You've got smart cities already being done. I just got sent a TikTok video of self-healing roads over in Europe. Things are going to change. Smart cities are going to connect cars and traffic lights, and with zero emissions, and you've got some public transit already going on hydrogen, right? So I mean, it's going to be really interesting, and it's going to be, I think, for dealers, we really need to, we talked about on the other panel last week, was about how can we be different? And really, sometimes it's going to be about the fields, because prices are going to be prices. And what are you going to do to be different and be ready?
Interesting.
Be transactional, be straightforward, be transparent. I think the sooner you get on that bandwagon, the better off you're going to be.
Great. Thanks for that. We have Mr. Bobby Hobbs from Ascent Dealer Services. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and what your opinion is on the future of transportation, how you define it.
Sure. So my name is Bobby Hobbs. I'm one of the executive coaches here at Ascent Dealer Services. We're a large national F&I provider. I've spent most of my entire career running dealerships, and that's kind of what we do a little bit differently than a lot of your F&I providers. Is our coaching is all made up of former dealers, GMs, dealer principals, and operation directors like myself. So we come at things from a little bit of a different angle. And I liked today's topic for that reason, because as things move forward, you got to be nimble with the way that you're willing to deal with things, because whether you like it or not, things are changing. That's going to be where it is. And we see a lot of people that go all in on things. That isn't always the greatest idea, okay? But we see some people that aren't receptive to it at all. And then the train may leave you behind, So finding that happy medium of using things to your advantage and moving with it. We saw that with EVs, EVs, everybody went all in. I ran stores where we had Ford stores where you put millions of dollars into facilities that Ford told you needed to have, only for Ford to say, okay, well, hold on, nope, you don't need to have it now, and we're actually going to give these vehicles to everybody. So it's a challenging market trying to decide right now what to really put all your eggs into or not, and just be ready. So, being on top of all of the news, being on top of all of the different things, and then AI is a whole other thing that goes along with it. It's definitely going to be an interesting next 3 to 5 years. I think the people that are really structured about trying to be knowledgeable on all of these different things are the ones that are going to succeed. If you sit back and you're just hoping that doing business as usual is what's going to maintain it for you, I think that you're going to be sorely mistaken.
Fantastic. And next is Amberly. I think I pronounced that properly. I've actually followed Amberly for quite a while on LinkedIn, so I'm curious on her opinion on obviously DMS, but also on transportation.
Yeah, well, Ian, thanks for having me. So I'm the founder and managing partner of Dealer Merchant Services. We help dealers pass along their credit card fees to their customers, but we do that within the confines of state and card brand regulations. So what that means is that we've saved the dealer body $60+ million since we've started. And that means they can put those resources into better places, right? Better insurance for their employees, better minimum wage for their employees, right? So that helps with employee retention, as well as better resources into their own facilities, right? We've seen some dealers pay for an entire body shop with the amount of money that they can save, right? So we know that dealers are the highest proponent and propeller for their local economies. And so this allows for some interesting ways for them to save those monies and put that money in, put it into better places. What I'm seeing rapidly within that component, right, is we've got 1,000 dealers across the country. And it's interesting because they've said that consolidation is happening, but I can see it on my end because it's happening very quickly. We have so many dealers that reach out and go, hi, I just bought another store. I need credit card processing in 2 weeks, right? I need help with this, right? And so what's interesting there is that when they said that they are really consolidating, the average dealer principal is between the age of 70 and 75. They're not kidding. So you'll be on the lookout for these groups getting bigger. The small ones, the 3 to 5 store groups, are becoming 5 and 10 and 15 store groups. And then you're also seeing those 30, 40 store groups turning into 50, 70, 80 store groups. So I think that's an interesting component, and I'm certainly seeing that on my end. So such a pleasure to be here. I can tell you that the master of the mind is really a fun way to start a Monday morning. So thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And the future of transportation, you think, is acquisition?
I do. I think that they're going to consolidate, and these groups, to your point, Bobby, you have to be on the up and up with so many things, but they're going to start, really running in packs, meaning the way that they're going to sign up for services from the vendor side of things. They're going to be running in packs, and they're going to be expecting their vendors to be able to provide a level of excellence to a group size dynamic. And so I think that's an important piece of it.
Peter, maybe you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit more about that. Be back in a
Sure.
second.
You want me to go first before Bill?
I'll be back.
Go ahead, get back, Peter. I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, as most of you know, I decided to get back into the business after a 40-year career and a very, very short retirement afterwards. It basically, we've seen so many changes in the business, and I just pulled 2 books from my desk. One is The Future of Automotive Retail by Stephen Greenfield. He had 10 points in that. Only a few came through. Now he's done Future of Mobility. Well, we'll see how many of that holds true, because our business pivots faster than any business on earth because we live on the 30-day career. We have, because it's set up that way, it was set up that way 70, 80 years ago, that we are on a 30-day cycle. We cannot predict the future in any real form that has ever been shown, because it hasn't come true. The government said, okay, we have to go full EV. That has shown that the EV sales are down 45% over last year in month-to-month basis. So what happened there? Well, we've got to basically market saturation, and we've understood that it's not us that controls the cost, but a foreign government. I was in that business for 10 years, so I know it intimately, and I predicted it happening, and I put a post out about it about 4 days ago. Now, as we progress, we're looking at future of mobility. Okay, well, the future of mobility, we've had numerous manufacturers go into subscription-based models. The only two that I'm aware of that have actually had any success in it are Porsche and Cadillac. The other manufacturers, Volvo, BMW, Nissan, and a number of others, just failed miserably at it. Does that mean that it's not a viable solution? Absolutely is a viable solution. It just has to be for the right target market. In Canada, the Volvo subscription model sold 2 cars. 2 cars over 3 years. That was it. It was a colossal failure. So is that a model going along? Is the future of ride sharing coming to play because the younger generation doesn't want to drive? Is it like when I can say Ian and Bill and I, probably being the most senior of the panel here, we rushed out at 16 to get our driver's license. Just because we wanted that mobility. Now, the younger generation would rather take an Uber. It's just that way. So we have to basically rejig what we're thinking, how we present things, how we give the opportunity for people to actually engage with us as dealers, as vendors, and show them that we're meeting them at the point where they want to be met. I'm right now in the middle of writing an article based on what I call dealer math. And the dealer math that is out there right now is flawed. We're counting opportunities, leads. We're counting the test drive ratio. We're counting how many offers do we get. That is old math. The new math is, where are we getting these leads for? What is our conversion ratio on these leads? How's each individually granularly converting these leads, and how do we push these opportunities to the right people? It's only provided through business intelligence that we will get that way. We'll know exactly what cars to stock. We'll know everything from actual analytics, not KPIs. And that's, to me, that's the future of mobility coming through for success at a dealership region.
Thanks, Peter. So, Mr. Bill Camastro, the one and the only, obviously, Cadillac tried this model, so you would know about it, I'm assuming. I know Porsche was famous for it. There was even a dealer group where I used to live who tried it for all their brands as an in-house program. And I do think the model of changing the way people own cars is interesting. I mean, what's your opinion on changing? Leasing's obviously been around for a while, prepaid leasing, other things. Do you see that sort of as something that is going to move to the forefront of transportation? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I'm glad Peter went first, because he really kind of teed up what I wanted to say on that topic. The flex car models like it, there have been attempts at that for quite a while. Nothing really, grand scale. And I think the reasons for that is because it's not a grand scale idea. I think, to be honest, piggybacking what Peter said, it's just another one of those niche ideas where they think if they create a big enough dent in the soil, everything's going to fall into it. It's not going to happen. EV, same thing. I think between early adopters and like EV, for example, the early adopters, and based on what the political mandates were, you saw a lot of movement in that direction. Now, the bloom is off the rose, tax credits are going away in the US. now they're to the point where they're mandating, like in New Jersey where I am, they're gonna mandate 35% of all new cars sold, the California model have to be EV. Well, here's the problem. The states around us are not gonna do that. And, you gotta have people jump, unfortunately, and it won't work, it's gonna hurt the dealers. People are gonna jump state lines to buy cars. Which is in the Northeast where you have a very high population and a very oversaturated, franchise dealer population. You're gonna see a lot of that. And here's what strikes me, and maybe, to Peter's point, because I've become one of the more senior people, strictly by age, I might add. There's only a few ways to move, right? You can slide, you can roll, you can fly, you can float. Okay, not to oversimplify it. And the biggest change in mobility happened when the cavemen discovered the wheel. That's the biggest change we're ever going to see in mobility. Realistically, we can only move on something that goes between 1 mile an hour and 75 miles an hour anywhere in the world legally. So that means, and some people will go above that, some people will stand still, but 99% of all mobility is going to travel in that range. Realistically, just like everything else, Buffalo sandals were in the 90s. They came back again 10 years ago. The mullet was in style, then it came back. Mullet contest. Still we walk upright with opposable thumbs, and at the end of the day, I'm going to use those, to coin a phrase. What I think, my opinion, is what's going on right now. The reason why all of this has happened is predominantly because they've never been able to break down the molecular structure of carbon. Truth be told, it's very difficult to break down the molecular structure of carbon, and because of that's where the whole green philosophy, got legs, as it were.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scientific work being done to break down the molecular structure of carbon. If that occurs, you'll see a much bigger full swing all the way back to the combustion engine if it's zero emissions. Because realistically, there's more power, more torque. Now I know with the EV you get all that, but truth be told, EV is not a less expensive alternative. It may be for a period of time when you charge your car, but you're never going to eliminate the time lag of charging your vehicle because it takes time. You may reduce the amount of time, but I can fill up an Escalade in 5 minutes, and if there's a person in front of me at the gas pump, maybe it's going to take me 10 minutes. We're going to paralyze society if you pull into a charging station and everybody's electric, and the charging station in front of you has somebody on it who just pulled up. You got to call your boss and say, "I'll be in 2 hours late today." That's what's going to happen. And the charging grid, we already have problems without having charging stations everywhere.
Yeah.
The charging grid near me on Route 84 in New York, there's a huge plant that went up recently. I couldn't figure out what the hell it was. It's actually a plant that generates electricity. Now, the mechanism where the electricity moved, where it's converted to electricity and then stored to ship out, takes up about an acre of property. The plant that generates the electricity takes about 50 acres. It's got big smokestacks on the roof. It's got big conveyors, okay? That's what's really going on behind the scenes. So I think about this for a moment. If they do find a way to break down the molecular structure of carbon, where cars are truly zero emissions, it's going to take further, and it's going to happen. It's going to take further steam out of the EV business. But I will say this, it's going to occupy a piece of our business. And I think what we're seeing now is somewhat of the normalization of where EV kind of belongs in the scheme of things. So I think really what I believe is going to happen is you're going to see a much more fragmented, approach to mobility in the future, because huge portions of population owning cars. The population is increasing almost everywhere in the world, maybe with the exception of the US for right now. There's going to be more people driving. The road's going to be under stress. So there's going to be a lot of alternatives to how people move. It's never going to completely get rid of the automobile in some form, in my opinion. And there is a tremendous, wealth of crude oil all around the world to be used for the foreseeable future. If you forget the emissions for a moment, and I've done research on this for presentations that I've done, the amount of crude oil or oil per se that exists on planet Earth could power, if they take away the emissions, could power the world for 10 times longer into the future than can EV, for one simple reason. The alloys and all the precious metals needed to power cars through electric, like manganese, nickel, things of that nature, there's a finite amount of that under the Earth's surface, and it takes infinitely more time that it would never be around for the Earth to produce those things. So the oil is easily accessible. There's much more of it for eternity. And at the end of the day, if they break down the molecular structure of carbon, I think you're going to see that come full circle a lot faster, because they're working on it now, a lot faster than perfecting this whole EV mentality. Go online and do some research on the availability of the alloys and the minerals needed to produce EV batteries, and you'll see there's a finite amount, and underneath the surface is a real concern and paranoia about this already. So that's my take on it. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be much more fragmented, but I still think that the ICE engines will be the star of the show for many years to come. That's my take.
Totally.
Thanks for that, Bill. I'm gonna jump around a little bit.
I'd like to add to that, Ian.
Well, we're kind of tight on time, Peter. We got a lot of guests, so what I'm going to do is go to the next question, and we can definitely jump around a little bit.
Sure.
Let's go with Bobby on this one. What does change mean in the industry to you? I mean, you obviously deal with a lot of stuff going on in dealers, as does Bill and everybody else. But what's your thought on change?
Well, change, this kind of actually goes along with what Bill was just going over. I live in New York, similar to like where he is with New Jersey, where you have these mandates, right? Where it's the 35% EV with the Cal state emissions, and like what he was talking about, where these manufacturers are going to push these vehicles on these dealers, right? And there isn't that customer base for it, right? Like it's great that the states want it, but the fact is that the actual consumer doesn't want it at that same level. When you're looking at it at like a 6 to 9% adoption rate, and the states want 35%, the manufacturers, they're going to have to send these vehicles to these states because they need to do it or they're going to miss money. So, change is very difficult in some situations because, you're not even just having to worry about the change in what consumers want. You're having to worry about the change in politics. Politics are what's driving the necessity for this. It's not that consumers want to be at 35% EVs by 2030 is when that's due. So it's difficult. Change is something that always happens. That's not new. This business changes all the time. Peter was talking about that before. Is we change frequently. We're good at that. We saw that a lot with COVID. The people that were good with change not only did well, they grew, right? The people that are not, they kind of stagnated and sold, so change is not a bad thing, but some of these changes are not necessary, and what I would like to see is that to become easier for these dealers. I really don't appreciate where some of these government mandates, state mandates are putting some of this added pressure on these dealers. And this is coming from somebody who was, running stores and, was head of sales for multiple brands. It's very, very difficult for you to plan not only just your inventory setup, your advertising setup, your expense structure. What are we going to have to spend to build? As Bill was talking about, infrastructure is not even available. So you've got so many things that are up in the air that you don't even control, and you're being forced to try and acquiesce to them. So it's a difficult situation. But you got to stay on top of it. I mean, that's about the only thing I can tell you is the one thing. And this is actually, I know that Peter, you were talking about an article you were writing, and there's an article that I'm working on that talks about the fact that this is how we've always done it. We've heard that in stores, right? We've all heard, this is how we always done it. I always tell people when I go into stores, I don't think I'm better than anybody. I don't think I'm smarter than anybody. The one thing that's always made me successful and different than anybody is I don't take that answer. And I think that's important to look at when it comes to change. If you don't know the answer, that's okay. Look into it, right? If you don't know how you're going to be allocated cars, figure out the way, right? Don't just take somebody's, well, hey, this is how we do it. The systems, understand them. Don't just take what has always been done as being the answer, because right now, if you just go with the way it's always been done, you're going to be out of business.
100%. So Amberly, I mean, obviously we're talking a little bit about change. Obviously we're talking about credit card processing, but when you look at banking, I guess as a part of a car business and that kind of thing, I mean, what are you hearing from dealers when they're trying to, I guess, reallocate funds on the change side there? I mean, what do you think?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. I think that, when we started down this path and we started Dealer Merchant Services, most dealers were not open to paying fees. And that's simply because they didn't want to disrupt the Apple Cart. They didn't want to trip over dollars to pick up pennies as it pertains to their customer experience. The way that we train in the word tracking and our proprietary methodology, that is allowed for, again, 1,000 stores across the country to save some of this money. But it's not, what I think is interesting as it pertains to changes, like you said, Bobby, dealers are willing it moves fast. They're willing to they go from early adopters all the way to laggards, right? Skeptics. And then what happens when we first started down this path, we were doing NADA webinars, and everybody that we asked, are you even considering, cash and credit prices? Are you even considering or seeing that in your marketplace? Well, only 25% of dealers were seeing that a couple years ago. Now it's completely flipped. It's the other way, right? So we've had conversations 3 or 4 years ago that said I would never over my dead body pass along these fees. And now they're calling, right? Now they've said, okay, I don't have a choice because the expense is so high. And so as it pertains to change, I think they are nimble, even though these are big operations, they are nimble. They are willing to make the adjustments should it make sense. And so certainly I also believe that dealers in general are some of the smartest, most adept entrepreneurs out there, right? I mean, they really are brilliant. They're always looking for the next opportunity to make their business better, more sophisticated, faster, leaner, all of those things. And so I'm 22 years in the business. So Bobby, you brought up COVID, but really it goes back to 08 and 09, right? They have scar tissue that is run linearly throughout the entire automotive industry. And so they've got more grit than anybody else. So they're not afraid of the change. They know the cycle is coming, and they really anticipated this. Everybody that was really seeing it from a 50,000 foot view during COVID said, this is great. We're making money. We finally deserve to make money after 08 and 09, but this is also temporary, right? And so I think what's interesting is that dealers are nimble. They've got grit. They can handle the change. So it's an exciting time. That's for sure.
I understand. Yeah. I mean, when you're looking at dealers, I mean, everyone underestimates them, but clearly it's, they're able to adapt to that change no matter what that change is. So Peter, I mean, obviously we're talking about change, and I know you wanted to add something there, but I wanted to give fairness to the panel there. What's your thought on change and dealers' ability to change, I guess? What does that mean to you?
Well, again, I'm a little bit controversial in how I talk. I think the very first thing is that dealers are going to, first of all, I don't believe vendors are partners. I believe that vendors are actually tools for dealers to succeed. And the challenge, why I say that is that if we were true partners, we'd share in the loss and we share in the gain, which we don't. So therefore, we're actually just a tool for them to survive, and you have to have the right tools for the job. I also, with that, I see a lot of vendors actually sharpening their, as they say, sharpening their iron to help dealers and assist them to have the right tools for the job. Like Amberly, like Ascent, like Motor Lock Plots. I think these tools are all coming out. Like the Reynolds and the CDKs are the past. They're actually going to be the challenge moving forward, because they're not moving forward at the speed of transition that it's necessary in this industry to survive. They're relying on the big powerful blue, as they were, Reynolds, as being the be all to end all. While they've seen,
And I think dealers are sick of being handcuffed to those guys too. I mean, I see it all the time.
Agreed.
yeah, and
100%.
with Reynolds and CDK saying we own your data, which they're going through court cases after court cases after court cases.
Checking out, yeah.
It's going to change and evolve in that manner. We can't, and if you want to be a vendor in today's market, you have to be there as a performance asset for a dealer. That's it.
100%.
And if you're not a performance asset, then you will not survive. And that's the significance of it. You're also, and I'm gonna put this out there, you're actually, if you are in this space, you want to target the top 5 to 10% of dealers, not the 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, I should say. You want 6 to 10, and not the 11 through 50, because that's where your growth is going to be, and that's it. That's exactly where the change is going to happen. Those are the dealers that are looking to be forward thinking to get to the top 5%, and they're not in the 11 through 50% are on the 30 to 90 day cycle. Oh, we'll try it, and we'll try and see how it works. That's something as vendors, I think that's one of our biggest areas of change is going to be. And I think when you look at business analytics, it's going to dictate who you're going to use, because that is the biggest change, because we've never used analytics before.
Interesting. So Jody, I mean, we're obviously talking about change and overcoming change. You're obviously a new entrant into the, I guess, the world of CRM, DMS, inventory management, all that kind of stuff. What are you getting from dealers who say want to change to a new platform? Like what are you hearing from them?
Well, and so like, I don't want to like say any names. I want to try to remain neutral coming into the market, but there is some big changes happening in Canada, marketing wise, DMS, CRM, and I think like working at Vin Solutions for 5 years and working for a really large dealer group in Canada, there's so many different systems out there, and you're putting so much on the deal. Like hearing like 35%, having to sell 35% is like mind blowing to me. That is insane. And on top of everything else that we're expecting from the dealers, so our biggest goal was to keep it simple, put all this stuff in one place. So that way the focus can be, hey, you know what? Everything's in one spot. I can look for my pictures. I can update stuff. I can push it to my, we have everything, and we can do in 2 clicks, push to our third-party selling site. And, like you're seeing you guys are talking about, how these groups are like becoming huge, and it's happening in Canada too, where they're starting to say, hey, we don't want to be handcuffed anymore. They're dropping some pretty big, and they're open to change. We're going to people, and people are like, we need change. We want change. And it's quite refreshing, actually, to hear people that are like very open-minded, because they know change is coming. And the simpler we can make it for the dealer, the simpler it's going to be for the consumer. Like, one of the other things on MotoClose, they can shop in their own language. Having a website where a consumer can shop in their own language, whatever language that is. Just keeping it simple, being able to, it just makes it easier to evolve, because we're always going to be evolving. Our software is changing every day as we come to market, and we're building and we're getting requests, and being nimble for us is huge. If we expect the dealer to be nimble, we need to be nimble as a software solution, right? Which, you're talking about the big guys, like 30 days out. That's, like if you're giving
If they're
people 30
lucky.
days out, right? Like, you know what I
If
mean?
they're
If you're like
lucky.
expecting
Yeah.
someone to, as a contract, you're like, no, they're not.
They'll
gonna
be,
do-
they'll be lucky to get a
Right.
phone call back in 30 days, let alone a change. You kidding me?
Yeah.
At least that's the,
Yeah.
that's the
So-
information that I get. And any kind of launch or
Yeah.
install for anything new, 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah, like, are you kidding me? Like, we're going on the fly. Like, we've got dealers asking us for stuff. I'm like, yeah. And I mean, I've been in the industry and changes don't happen.
Yeah.
And so for us to be able to give what they need and what they want, like, it's the simplest thing of having your photos of your vehicle details in the same spot as your DMS and your CRM is unheard of. What?
Why? Yeah.
Like, why?
So,
Yeah.
so what do you think, Bill?
As
What
you
do,
guys are saying, is nimble.
so what do you think, Bill, as someone who's in the industry, but also an investor in technology? Do you think these older legacy companies are moving fast enough? What do you think?
I don't think there's a big disparity between how fast they move, but I will say this, to the point these young ladies made. One of the big problems, and I think Pete teed it up nicely, the vendors not being partners. The truth of the matter is they want to sell their product to make money. Okay, so let's not beat around the bush. That's what they want to do. So and sell any other way, you're not being clear. The reality of it is most vendors, everybody, there's a finite amount of ways you can twist up the same pretzel, right? So in the industry, the goal is to sell cars, communicate as fast as possible, create as much little friction as possible, and have the most information available as possible. Even AI is finite. I don't care what it tells me.
Yeah.
And AI is all anecdotal. It's only as good as what's been put into it, and then it feeds it back to you in a way that hopefully is useful to a human being during the engagement. That's what it's about. So all that having been said, most of the vendors that are out there, and the reason why there are so many vendors is because there's a lot of cash rolling around the business. And what happens is, I have two of my children work for companies that young ladies used to work for, and they sell their products. And those two companies are very, very big. One of them belongs to Cox Media, one's Cars.com, and the reps are always, when they walk in, it's sell. When you see them, all they're doing is selling. That's not a partner. That is not a partner. That's a parasite. Okay. They're only as good as what the host body has inside of it. And I'm not really interested in that relationship. I'm interested in a relationship with the vendors that walk in, and long before they sell me anything, they want to know what my business model is, what my objectives are, and they truly understand what parts of their program or hardware, software retrofit well into my environment. If they keep selling beyond that, they lose credibility. And anybody that walks in, it was said earlier, anybody that walks in and says, you get the first 3 months free, I don't want them. Because I'm not interested in free. I want you to make money, and I want me to make money. And even if you're expensive, but you do it right and I make money, I'm better off with that than getting a stealer deal with you that you'll hate, you won't want to service. I'm not interested in that relationship. I think what's happening now with a lot of the DMS companies, to be candid, is a lot of them are going to, and I think there's some value to it. A lot of them are going to, as much like a Tekion, to a full service DMS where they give you all of the add-ons you can find everywhere else and packaging it inside of one, portal. Because the one thing that's true, the end users, and this is where I make my money on the investment side because I'm a developer as well, is making it, the people that write the codes and the algorithms, they think very differently than the folks who are the end users. The big gap in between. The language,
Totally. Yeah.
the thinking isn't the same. So where I work is in that big gap in the center to help keep the intellectual integrity, but to dumb down the functionality to the point where the end user is interested, it moves fast, it's easily understandable, it's adopted quickly, and they can see results without intellectual properties or value. It sounds easier than it really is, to be perfectly honest with you. the fact of the matter is most of the DMS companies, look, there's a finite amount of information that they can gather. There's a finite amount of functions that we have, whether it's F&I, fixed operations, twisting it around and try to make it look different, using different colors, but it's very simple. The faster I can get the information, the usable information that I need, the better. And the DMS companies in the future that are going to do the best, in my opinion, are going to be the ones that place a premium on really, really super duper implementation, staying with the dealer as long as it takes so that all of the end users are high functioning, and then having a regular forced in person, completely against the whole COVID thing, okay, and remote working. Nothing's gonna replace human interaction. If I see a person sitting in front of me that shows me the interest in my business and my work, I'm gonna listen to those people. It's easy to hang up a phone. It's easy to click off a link. It's easy to get off this video call right now. Just hit a button and I'm gone. Okay? It only takes time to drive to me. I'm going to take the time to listen. And if they're in front of me, helping me do a better job at what I'm doing for a living, that person's valuable to me. It's the people side of the business that we have to keep entrenched in presentations, pitches,
Tangible.
maintaining. Otherwise, your churn of customers is going to continue. The next fancy widget or shiny object is going to get somebody's attention, and they're going to hope this is going to be the company that's going to really support me at the level that I need. Ask any dealer who's got his money invested in any big company. Okay, main thing. So 1 + 1 = 2. I don't care what buttons I have to press on your program to get there. Who's going to support me the best? That's what I'm worried about, because I know what I think. I have 75 employees that they don't tell me what they're thinking all day long. They don't tell me what they can't do all day long. They're only showing me what they can do, but they don't tell me what they can't do. And the companies that support me the best are the ones that I'd rather pay you $5,000 more a month if you can help every one of my salespeople sell one more car. That's what it's going to come down to.
Thanks for that.
I agree.
Hope they didn't confuse everybody.
No.
So
How many salespeople you have, Bill?
Including my internet salespeople, I have 14.
reasonable.
That'd be a good return on the investment.
We are, we're in the top 0.1% for ROI for what Cadillac's dealer of the year the last 16 years in a row.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we're very that's how we bought this big expensive table right here.
The small size one, right?
Yeah.
So obviously we're talking about adapting, we're talking about overcoming, we're talking about change. How do you advise dealers on how to be more adaptable? Let's start with Bobby on that one. You're muted, by the way.
Sorry, I did that so I couldn't hear me there. So trying to be more adaptable, I think, is super important. Kind of at this point, if you're not adaptable, you're probably already on your way out. That's that type of mindset. It just doesn't work anymore. And you're seeing that. I know Amberly was talking about how you're getting the condensing of the dealer body, which you are. Like I said, I was the variable ops director of a 16-store group, and we were regularly buying stores from people that did not want to adapt, and they actually were getting out of the business because they understood that they did not want to adapt and needed to adapt. So I think being willing to adapt is one of the most critical things that you could possibly do right now is being open to everything. I mean, really, let's take AI, for example, kind of want to build on what Bill was saying a little bit with, the customer interaction with a person. I know some people that are all in on AI, right? And they're jumping in and they're using AI, which is good. I think adapting and using it is a good thing. But the problem is what they're doing is they're taking the personal aspect out of it, and they're getting interactions with people that don't feel organic, right? They don't feel transparent. Mm-hmm. And so, adaptation can be a double-edged sword, right? Where if you're going in all in, you can be overdoing it and people aren't liking the response. So I think adaptation, being willing to adapt is a very, very important thing, but you also kind of have to be willing to look at what those results are. I'll use myself as an example, okay? I talk for a living for the most part. I am not good at writing, right? And I know my weaknesses with this. I should have paid more attention in elementary school and high school and English class. But you know, when I was always writing emails to people, I started off early in this business, probably in like 2008, starting to send video emails to people because I knew the format of my email, the writing would not look good, right? And so I'm personally very very self-conscious about my emails, right? So I signed up for Grammarly for their AI tool to help the way that I write, right? And it does a great job. You know, it does what it's supposed to do. It corrects my errors with, you know, my punctuation, words, spelling, all that type of stuff. Okay. But the problem is, and this is where I'm talking about being ready to understand how to use it correctly when you're adapting to it and adopting these things, is it'll sometimes change it so much that it doesn't sound like it's coming from me. You know, the people that do business with me know that I'm a very blunt and straight and to the point type of person when I talk about things. I don't get fancy with my words. I don't try and get all make people feel like I'm all high and mighty. So you have to kind of be careful with when you're adapting to things, that you are also you're also monitoring what you're adapting to, is I guess what I'm trying to get at. You know, it's one thing to go in and do something, but hoping for it to just work the way you expect it to is not adapting, right? It is just hoping for it. So adapting is going in, putting your full effort behind it, and trying to make sure that you utilize these tools in the way that is maximizing them, right? Because all of these things, it's not about just flipping a switch and okay, now you're selling everybody, right? We all have similar tools with very differing outcomes, right? The difference is how do people utilize those tools? CRM for a specific, you were saying you used to be with VinSolutions. VinSolutions was one of my favorite CRMs, you know, and I could tell, you know, I could tell differently with, my group was with them, you know, and we'd have very different results, right? We might have 20% of our stores that were utilizing none of it. We'd have 20% of our stores that were amazing with it. And guess what? You had very different results because of that. So it's very important that when you sign up with a program, to both Peter and Bill, when you're the vendor, is helping those people utilize those things, right? Making sure that they're getting utilization out of what they're signing up for. If it's a DMS, I don't know how many different modules in a DMS you pay for that you never actually use, okay? And when you're the store and you're the person running the store, is making sure that you're putting that effort into the utilization of those tools from your end. If I'm paying for something, I want to make sure that we're actually utilizing it. You know, usage and utilization are two different things. We want to make sure that we're in a way that maximizes our performance.
Thanks. Amberly, what do you think?
Well, I think that as far as adapting, I can see it just differently from my perspective, because I've gone from 0 to 1,000 dealers in 5 years when frankly dealers were not surcharging and passing along credit card fees. So my view is different from Jody's, even from the DMS perspective, Bobby from the F&I products. You know, everybody has a different seat on the bus here from a vendor perspective, and of course Bill with him being an investor and a dealer. But what I think is that when dealers can see that it can benefit them, I do think the cool thing about it is that they are open to it, right? I can tell you that they are willing to at least have a conversation and be open to the idea of change. And that's, I think that we'll continue to see that adaptation, because we see it all the time, right? But just from my own personal business, zero surcharging basically from a dealer perspective in the dealer body before I started, and now 1,000 dealers. And that's just my own, right? There's copycats out there, of course, that are trying to do what we're doing. But, you know, at the end of the day, they want to adapt because they know they don't have a choice. So that's my take.
Fair enough. Jody, adapting. What do you think?
I think, you know, like what everyone's kind of talking about is, you know, there's so many different vendors, there's so many different tools, and the support is huge. Helping them understand what they're signing up for, making it simple, and supporting. Like, that's some of the biggest things I learned working at VinSolutions. I was a performance manager, is being that consistent person, and sometimes telling them you suck, like, you know, and helping them understand and showing them so that they can go into their meetings and they can be like, hey, this is what I'm doing to make myself better. Like Bobby said, you know, like I came from a big group. That's how I ended up at Vin Solutions, is our group used Vin Solutions, and I drank the Kool-Aid, and I'm taking that all now and knowing how important it is to support the dealer. I mean, we have to inspect what we expect, and they're being held to this high regard now. There's so much change, and you gotta understand their business to support them and make them better and profitable. So that they keep using the tools, right?
Yep.
So
Peter, adaptability, what do you think?
Well, I'm just gonna basically say we can't buy a hammer and think it's a screwdriver and make it work. It's that's the biggest challenge in automotive in my mind, is that we're buying into these solutions and thinking we can adapt it to what is actually going to work in our dealerships.
Fantastic.
That's the biggest problem.
Bill, final word to you on adaptability, that we're out of time almost.
Well, I don't think we have a choice because life's all about adaptability, right? So I look, the good thing is you have a lot of young people on here and some of us older guys. It's a good check and balance, right? You know, there's a lot of old values that do work. There's a lot of new things that do work. I think in terms of adaptability, if you're not adaptable, you're not growing. That's my opinion. If you're not adaptable, you're not growing. And when you get to the point where you can't adapt, you know, if the world's going to pass you by. Because look, if you're not adapting, but everybody else is, you're already left behind.
Fantastic.
You're already left. So you have to.
Thanks for everybody have a great week. And for those in Canada, happy Victoria Day or holiday if you're not calling it Victoria Day anymore. And thanks for joining in. Bye for now.
What pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.